Hey guys, it's Smurf here. I realize that on YouTube, you don't have a really detailed, way of breaking down like all the way from, the cap all the way down to this, even the air, where your air hose connects into. So I just wanted to do a complete breakdown of this guy and show you some tiny maintenance you can do on your needle, and also, a little bit of maintenance in the back where the spring's at. So first, start with the cap. Just simple unscrewing. Then you want to take the back of the airbrush here, and you also want to take off this little cover piece that where the choking nut is. You take off the choking nut. Then you carefully pull out your needle. There you go. Set that aside in a safe place. And then, usually when I get the needle out, I like to start taking the caps off at the end here. And sometimes in there, you'll get a whole bunch of gunk. So what I like to do is I like to let it sit, kind of like a bath full of some water, and maybe like I use some airbrush cleaner, like Iwata airbrush cleaner. It works pretty well. It's especially useful when you're using it for like in between paints. That'd be the best way of using that. And then also when you're done, always clean your airbrush. Always clean your airbrush. And also when you're done painting, you also want to disassemble your airbrush. Not, to the extent I'm going to show you right now, but at least down to like just before where the air hose hooks into. So after I get that cap on, usually I have my needle off by this point, which is a good idea because you can catch your finger on the end of that pretty easily. Or if you're not paying attention, you can do it this way. If you don't want to take the needle off right away, you can pull back on your trigger like that. You don't need to press it in, but you can pull back your trigger like that, and it'll hide the needle in there, and you can just do it like that. Set that aside. And also in here, you'll get a whole bunch of gunk in there. Usually I like to let that sit in a bath over there, and with some water and airbrush cleaner. Then at this point, I like to completely disassemble the nozzle, because that's where most of the gunk is. Most of what your paints will kind of like dry onto. And then what you do, you find the spot where it's at, where your tool comes in handy. And then this is a pretty tiny piece, as well as when you're taking this off, make sure you don't lose it like I almost did. This little piece right here can get really hidden in carpets, and I would just not generally drop this, because if you step on it and you bend that tip, that's a replacement part for you. That's not fun. Also, there is a little tiny O-ring on here. If your O-ring broke from when you're doing this, from when you're disassembling, sometimes that can happen, or an O-ring breaks. It happens. You can order replacement O-rings from the Iwata site, and it should be able to. You'll get, I think, a package of O-rings with some of the large O-rings that are in the over where the air hose connects to. In this part, there is also an O-ring over there, so that's pretty. You can get that from their website. And then you want to disassemble this part. takes a little bit, and then you kind of, when you pull it out, sorry, I forgot to mention that when I was doing it. When you pull it out, you kind of want to go like this so it doesn't drag on the top of your airbrush. You know, you don't want to scratch your stainless inside of there. That'd be bad. And then the trigger just pretty much comes right out. And the trigger, even on the drawings, if you look on the blown up drawings, this little divot part faces the rear. So you want to make sure that when you're putting it back together, and at this point, when you have everything back together, you'll put your needle through, and that's what holds down the trigger. So just make sure you don't like tip it upside down when you're like assembling it. So that comes out pretty easy like that. You also want to clean inside there. I don't know if you can see that properly. Hold on, let me. Yeah, in there. You'll also get some gunk in that area, because that's where the paint flows through and then out the nozzle, obviously, because this is where your cup's at. So you kind of want to either let that sit in like a ultrasonic bath. I've seen people use that, and it works pretty well for cleaning this part mostly. But you don't want to ultrasonic clean this part next to it. So if you're gonna stick that in ultrasonic cleaner, I wouldn't recommend using this, because you'll just strip all the oil that keeps this lubricated out there. So make sure you take this part off. And you might have saw, but don't be an idiot and use just straight pliers on there. So what I like to do is I like to take the paper towel over there, and I might put too much on this paper towel, but yeah. Hold on, let me kind of rip off a smaller piece, maybe not the whole thing. Yeah, this is just doing a little lazy. You wanna kind of twist it over to the left like this way. And I already kind of disassembled it. It can be finger tight, so you don't have to. The first time is going to be a little rough, and that's where I would use this. Sorry, that was dirt from my pliers. Also, another reason why you should put a paper towel on it so you don't dirty that up. So at this point, once you got a little bit loosened, see that O-ring right there? You can replace that pretty easy. These ones tend to break more. So at that point, you have literally the entire airbrush is stripped down. Oh, also there's an O-ring right over there. That one probably breaks down more than the one that goes through the air. But now you can stick this in an ultrasonic cleaner, just to get that little end right there, and maybe some accumulated dirt that's got in there, and that'll be safe for you to use. But I don't recommend putting this through an air a cleaner, because you want to keep this lubricated as much as you can and tend to not mess with it. You tend to only want to do that when you're putting it in an ultrasonic cleaner, or if you want to, I don't know if I would, but if you want to just stick it in water and airbrush cleaner, then that would also be a decent idea. But you don't want to strip too much of the oil off of the airbrush tool itself. So now we're all disassembled. You want to take some sort of lubricant. I got I got Super Lube here. Nothing with silicone in it. Silicone is bad for your airbrush. Well, decently bad. And then here, I already did mine today, but you want to tend to get this a little bit on your finger. Kind of rub it around in your finger. And then, here, hold on, let me get. And then you want to rub it upwards like this. You want to make sure that you're not rubbing your finger towards the tip, because you can catch your finger and it doesn't feel good, and it can bend your tip easily. And you want to get it. I'd say about halfway. That's good. And then you We'll wipe that off on your towel, making sure to wipe to the end of the tip. And then at that point you can, after you get everything situated how you want to, put on your air supply where your air hose goes into. Then let me see, get the tiny nozzle part, which you've also cleaned inside there. You can stick that in the bath. It's not too good for the O-ring, but as long as you don't leave it in there too much. And you finger tight it on there first. Oops, sorry. Tighten it up. Tighten up decently, but not, you know, just to where you're getting a little give. I don't know if any of you guys worked in construction or anything like that, but don't strip out your thread that's on there, because that's really tiny thread, and that's a replacement part. Then you want to put your cap on first, so that when you put your needle through, you don't have any resistance. But you don't want to put your other cap on. And then take your trigger, make sure your divot is facing towards the back, and then at a 90-degree angle like this, you want to put it in the same way you took it out. You can, I forgot to mention, you can put some lubricant right here, but just because it's only the spring that's, you know, where you would put that, it's not really a big deal. In fact, I don't even do it at all most of the time. If people tell you to lube that, it's usually just overdoing it, really. Oh, okay, well, yeah, like that. Sorry. And then you want to get it finger tight, a little bit more than finger tight on this one, because you have the spring to deal with, but you also don't want to break your spring. Okay. And then with your lubricated needle, carefully stick it in like this until it pops out the end over there. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. You take your chuck, finger tight. And at this point, when you have your needle in, you want to kind of pull back a little bit. I always tend to do this way, because it's just easier. You already got your needle in, it's no big deal. Then you put on your cap. And then I tend to use the bigger cup. I do have smaller cups, but at that point you pretty much got everything assembled. Put on your cup. Make sure your trigger isn't sticking. Mine's doing a pretty good job. Yep. And there you go. Whoops, there you go. Yep, just easy disassemble. Usually you disassemble all this like that, except for the air hose. You don't need to do that ever, almost, pretty much, unless it's really bad inside where your needle and paint connect over there when it comes out the nozzle over here. So that'd be the only time you need to do that, just for ultrasonic purposes. You know, if you're gonna bath it, or just so it doesn't, you know, like I said, ruin any of the strip any of the oil that's inside there, because you need to keep it, especially this, you need to keep as much oil and lubricant in there as much as you can, as you can, just so it lubricates that little trigger part where essentially your trigger pushes down and engages the air. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and not many people included this part because I didn't know, and you know, I was being a dummy and I stripped this a little bit, but it's finger tight, so I shouldn't have a problem undoing it. you know. So, yep. Thank you.